Hey, what's going on YouTube? So I want to do my week 11 prediction video. So last week I went 24-6. I ended up predicting 30 games instead of my normal 20 just because of how big a week it was in college football. And that brings me to a total record of 151-59. So, yeah, record's getting better by week. But, excuse me, I believe it was both of my upsets of the week last week actually came true. I had Navy beating Memphis and then Oklahoma State beating TCU, and both of them came true. So, move on to my week 11 predictions. So, start out with Oklahoma State and Iowa State. So, obviously, Oklahoma State had as good a week as really anyone, maybe outside of Alabama last week. Just kind of beat TCU sideways. Actually, I wouldn't say that bad, but it was pretty bad. And, I don't know. A lot of people are looking at this game as a trap game for Oklahoma State because last time they were ranked inside the top 10 and went to Ames, they did lose. So, yeah, as long as they can take care of business right now, they're only 14-point favorites. So, as long as they can hang on, stop Joel Lanning, a solid quarterback that took over for Sam B. Richardson at Iowa State a couple weeks ago. They also do have a couple solid freshman running backs as well, but I think Oklahoma State can take care of this. I don't think they're going to overlook it again this year. Last time they did lose in Ames, there was a big plane crash that happened, and so there was a distraction. Granted, the homecoming thing a couple of weeks ago, but I think that's by the wayside at this point, at least to distract. I wouldn't say it's by the wayside, but it's enough in the past that it won't cause an upset to happen by itself. So, move on to Oklahoma and Baylor, and you know what? I'm going to end up previewing this game again in another video. I like doing that. I just don't like covering these big games just stuffed into some point in a 20-minute video. So, again, we'll put the description to that in the link below. I liked my previews last week. I think it was a good way to do it. So, yeah, I'll come back tomorrow with that video. So, move on to Washington State and UCLA, and my first upset of the week. So, I think that UCLA is on the right track, but here's my thing. Josh Rosen's played good the last couple of weeks and tends to be a trend this year for him just to have inconsistencies. Like I said, been getting better, but I think it's about time for Josh Rosen to have another inconsistent game. And, you know, this Wazoo team is good. They put up a tough test against Stanford. They did beat Arizona State last week. I would believe it was 38-24. So, they're a very solid team, a lot better than a lot of people thought they would be, and definitely going to be a tough test for UCLA, whether they do win or not, but I am picking them. So, move on to Pittsburgh and Duke. So, 2-3 weeks ago, these were the two teams battling for first place in the Coastal. At this point, they've both been beaten by North Carolina, so now they're battling for second, actually. Yeah. So, Miami did beat, or after the whole Miami thing with Duke, they did get beat by North Carolina, so not been a good last 2 weeks for Duke. I think they respond solidly here. You know, Pitt had they had a competitive game against Notre Dame, but they weren't really in control ever. There was never a point where it was like, oh, I think Pitt might win this game. But nonetheless, a decent fight against a very good Notre Dame team, and still in the end, I think Duke's going to win. So move on to Maryland and Michigan State. So, Michigan State had an upset that not a lot of people saw coming last week to a Nebraska team that looked like it was slipping up. But they did lose, and it ruins their undefeated season. They're still in contention for the Big Ten. They do still control their own destiny. If they manage to beat Ohio State, then they will win. I believe it's the Big Ten North. And go on to face what will probably be Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. But they got to get through Maryland first, but I believe they'll do that no problem. I think they're going to actually beat Maryland pretty bad. I think they're really pissed off about what happened last week. So move on to Florida and South Carolina, and Florida squeaked out a win against probably the worst team in the SEC last week. So, you know, I think they'll rebound from that all right. South Carolina's been an up-and-down team this year. They've been a tough out for a lot of teams, but they did lose last week to Tennessee. But I think that Florida's a completely different animal, and I think that Florida's going to beat them. So, move on to Oregon and Stanford, and my second upset of the week. So, I think that Oregon will actually win this game. I think that Stanford's going to overlook them a little bit. Oregon's been very solid the last couple of weeks. You know, they beat Cal 44-28. Granted, Cal's been slipping a little bit. But, yeah, Oregon is an improved team that's playing with a little bit of fight in them now. And I know the game is at Stanford, but I think that Oregon's going to be able to do enough to come out with the win. Like I said, I think the Stanford's going to completely overlook them. I'm not saying that I think Stanford's looking ahead to the Notre Dame game quite yet, but I don't think that they're really going to prepare for Oregon as much as they should or take them as seriously as they should. Now, granted, if this was the same Oregon team that played Utah that lost to Washington State, then I'd probably say no, that they have no chance against Stanford. But like I said, Stanford's been a team that has been pretty good ever since that really good actually, since that Northwestern loss. But there have been a couple games where they played a little close. Washington State, one example. And, I think Oregon has enough talent, definitely has enough talent to win this game. Vernon Adams has been playing better. The defense has been playing better. So move on to Texas and West Virginia. Not only do I think West Virginia will win this game, I think they will go undefeated in the rest of the regular season. So I mentioned last week they do already have the Big Four teams in the Big 12 out of the way, and I think they're the fifth best team in the Big 12. So Texas is a team that's different every week. You never know which Texas team is going to show out. Granted, they are not very good on the road, which is weird because pretty much every Texas team in the past has been very good, really actually very good on the road, and a little poor at home. DKR really hasn't been so friendly to them the last couple of years, but they've played pretty solidly at DKR this year, or just if it's at a neutral site. I mean, look at their resume in DKR, beating Kansas State, almost beating Oklahoma State, and obviously beating OU in the Cotton Bowl this year in Red River. But look at them on the road, getting shut out by Iowa State. I'm trying to think of a few other ones. Oh, the win against Kansas last week's another example. Just getting beat sideways by Notre Dame. There's probably a few others that I just can't think of them right now. And I think the trend's going to continue. West Virginia team with big home field advantage. Team that did beat a very solid Texas Tech team last week, and I think that was the battle for fifth right there, was that Texas Tech West Virginia game, and I think West Virginia won that battle. So move on to Georgia and Auburn, and a matchup of just two extremely disappointing teams this year, both for different reasons. Georgia, pretty much all of the hope for their season was lost when Nick Chubb went down. Sad but true, but I think that Kentucky win last week is going to give them a little bit of confidence. And Auburn, actually, Jeremy Johnson looked pretty solid last week in a pretty convincing win against A&M. You want to say that Auburn looks like they're getting on the right track, and you know what? I mean, it's hard to get worse than they started off the season, but I don't think they're going to win this game. I think Georgia will do enough to win. The running game for Georgia is still pretty solid. Don't think that Auburn's one of those teams that's going to be able to stop or is going to be able to just focus all resources on stopping the run and be able to do it successfully. Like I said, Jeremy Johnson looked better last week, but Georgia still has a decent enough defense to be able to stop whatever Auburn throws at him. I don't think Sean White's coming back this week. Not really entirely sure on his injury situation, but if it is Jeremy Johnson, then I think it'll be no problem for Georgia. So move on to Ohio State and Illinois, and JT Barrett does return this week. Even though Cardale Jones was starting last week, it was a little bit close against Minnesota. I believe they had a 14-point win, but JT Barrett comes back, might take a quarter or two, but they'll find their rhythm and beat Illinois. So move on to NC State and Florida State, and honestly, I think this could be the most entertaining game in the ACC this weekend. Two teams that got beat in close games, actually, by Clemson in the last 2 weeks. NC State coming off a win against Boston College last week, though. Pretty good win, too. I believe it was 27-3. Not even 24-6. Either way, I think that Florida State will win this game. But like I said, I think it'll be a very entertaining game. It is in Tallahassee at Doak Walker. But like I said, if you're looking for games to watch this week that aren't really on the top end of games, definitely one of them. So move on to Washington and Arizona State. So again, two teams that haven't had a very good, or that didn't have a very good week last week. Arizona State got ousted by Washington State, and then Washington, came up short against Utah. So after just destroying Arizona 49-3, Washington was favored at home against Utah, actually, and I still don't get why. But they put up a decent fight against a Utah team that's still playing well, and I think that I think this could be a good game, but I think Washington's going to come out on top in the end. I think the defense will play well enough to stop Arizona State's offense. See if Jake Browning will actually do good enough to, to hold off whatever Arizona State's offense can throw at, can throw at Washington's defense. And I think Washington's going to win. I actually think it'll be a defensive struggle. I don't think it'll be a very entertaining game to watch, though. But yeah, Washington will win, I think. Anyway, move on to Michigan and Indiana, and a game that I think could be actually pretty entertaining again. Indiana gave Iowa a game last week, and for some reason Michigan's been having trouble putting away teams the last few weeks, and I think that could continue, but I think they're going to win. Jake Rudock's, I believe he played last week against Rutgers, but he should be back again this week, and Michigan did look very solid against Rutgers last week, but Rutgers is a team that competed with Kansas, so I don't know. It's hard to gauge how impressive a 51-14 win against Rutgers is. So move on to Miami and North Carolina, and I'd say probably it'll be the second most entertaining game in the SEC this weekend. So I think this is the last tough test for North Carolina before they go and face who will probably be Clemson in the ACC title. See if they can keep their hot streak going. Beat Pitt 26-19 and then just absolutely destroyed Duke last week 66-31. A lot of people saying that North Carolina's maybe not fluke, but that they're ranked way too high, and I just believe they're ranked right where they should be, if not even higher. Now, they did lose to South Carolina, but there's a lot of one-loss teams that are looking very good right now, that are very hot, that have a bad loss on their resume. OU, for example. Anyway. I think North Carolina is going to win this game pretty handily. Miami's been a very, very inconsistent team this year, and running into a hot North Carolina team, I don't think it'll be a very close game, but I still think it'll be a fun game to watch if you're a fan of watching a lot of points being scored. So move on to Clemson and Syracuse, and a game that will not even be close. And Clemson will run away with this game. They've been destroying teams like Syracuse this year, and I think that'll continue. So move on to Alabama and Mississippi State. And honestly, I think this will be the best game of the weekend. If there's any team outside of LSU, and I guess Ole Miss, that could beat Alabama in the SEC West, it is Mississippi State. Now, I don't know if the game is in Starkville. So obviously, I don't think that Dak Prescott's going to be able to do enough to beat a hot Alabama team right now, but I think that they could scare them for a little bit, that it could be a close game. Mississippi State's hung tough with every team that they've lost to this year, so even though that A&M loss is looking pretty bad now, I think that they still, they lost to A&M and LSU, so I think they'll hang tough in this game. I think it'll be a fun game to watch, but Alabama will definitely come out on top in the end. Alright, so move on to Wake Forest and Notre Dame. And again, another game that I don't think will be any sort of close. Now, off the top of my mind, I want to say it'll be close. But at the same time, I'm thinking that, Wake Forest gave Florida State a tough test. Also probably had the ugliest offensive game of the season against Boston College when I think they lost 3-0. So Wake Forest can be a scrappy team that can, I wouldn't say pull out close games, but make games close. And it might be something like this week, but I do believe the game is at home for Notre Dame. And, if the game is in Winston-Salem, I think it'll be close. But if the game is at Notre Dame Stadium, then I don't think it's going to be any sort of close. I don't know. It's just the way things go for Wake Forest this year, that they are 2-7 and they have lost a lot of close games. Yeah, game is at Notre Dame Stadium, so I don't think it's going to be any sort of close. Spread is Notre Dame by 27, and I think Notre Dame will cover the spread. Alright, so move on to Houston and Memphis. Game that had a lot more significance to it before. Memphis lost last week to Navy, and the other upset of the week that I actually got right. And I still think it'll be a good game to watch. Houston is undefeated. While I don't think they have a chance to make the playoff anymore at all, they could still put up a very good resume to be in a New Year's Six bowl. if they can win the AAC. So, and obviously it starts with this game this weekend, and see if they can win this game and then make it through Navy to finish off the year. I do think they'll win this game, though. I think Memphis can end up losing 2 in a row, and their season can kind of go spiraling downwards. All right, so move on to Arkansas and LSU. Again, another game that I think is going to be a very entertaining game to watch if you're a fan of teams running the ball. Two very good teams at running the ball and honestly stopping the run. Arkansas had a crazy game last week against Ole Miss, putting together another solidly mediocre season somehow. They've beaten some really good teams this year. They have beat, they almost beat A&M. They beat Auburn. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee. So they beat some quality opponents. But I don't think they can take down a monster like LSU. I think LSU is going to be a little bit pissed off about the game last week. I also don't think that Arkansas has good enough defense to stop Fournette like Alabama did. But yeah, I think this is easily a game that could have over 600 rushing yards. It's just the way these two teams are. Okay, so move on to my last game, Utah and Arizona. So Arizona's been as inconsistent and wild as teams come this year. So they put up a very good fight against USC last week. Did end up losing 37-30, but came out of the gates firing, took a 14-0 lead, and looked very competitive against a team that looks like one of the best teams in the Pac-12 right now, compared to just getting thrashed by Washington the week before. Now, I don't think Arizona has the makings to any sort of compete with a team like Utah. I think it's going to be an ugly game, and I think that Utah will continue their path towards maybe making it to a Pac-12 title game. So yeah, that's my predictions for Week 11. Like I said, I will come back tomorrow with my OU and Baylor predictions, and hopefully get that college stadium series. I think it's the intro video posted tonight. Pretty much done with the editing, and hoping all of them turn out good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.